And we're here with Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How's the offseason treating you? What are we like 4, 5, 6 days into it? I don't even know at this point, but I know we're in the offseason.
Yeah, well, we're not officially in the off season until you get to like past like the Zoom calls and what have you. So like we had the marathon one on Friday, which was 4 hours and 20 minutes.
Yes.
Not too bad, um, but once you get past those, obviously later on this week we're talking to Sweeney and Neely. Then we can hit the full off season mode. But obviously, a whole bunch of digest from what happened last week and what I think as expected is going to be a pretty pivotal offseason for this team. A lot of changes probably on the horizon.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot this offseason. And yeah, Friday was nuts. 8 a.m. to like 12:30. It just kept going, just person after person. And when you thought that they were done, there was another person to go, and you're like, oh, I forgot about this person, forgot about that. Because at the end, I was like, oh, it's just Jake DeBrusk left to go. And then they're like, oh, we got Mike Riley up next. I'm like, that's right, he's on the team as well. And then they didn't even talk to Halak and no Frederick and no Tenorti. So there was just a lot of people, person after person after person, but there was a lot to take away from it. But I want to start here because again, you mentioned it, pivotal off season for the Bruins, and I think, and this hit me after Rask's exit interview when he said that he had a torn labrum in his hip, played through it, needs surgery, won't be back until January or February. Obviously, Rask is a UFA, and it hit me. And I said, even if he comes back, he ain't playing until the second half of the year. You still have to find people to play from October through December. And who knows? Swayman could be playing great. Whoever they put in net could be playing great. And this just became a whole lot more complicated in net because not only is it, do the Bruins bring back Rask? It is also, how do you finagle that with his injury timeline? And now it has become that much more complicated. And there's lots of things they can do, right? There's free agent goaltenders out there. There's Devin Dubnik. There's James Reimer. There's Philip Grubauer with the Avalanche, but he'll sign out there. I'm certainly forgetting a bunch of different free agent goalies, including obviously Rask. Halak as well. Halak is up as well. So him too. So you have this issue in net where who's starting day one. It's not Rask. Rask will not be back. And, do you trust it to be Swayman and Vladar for 3 months? I don't know. I don't know if that's the route to take. What should they do?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough call for the Bruins in terms of how they approach that because it's a tough balancing act, right? Ideally, what you'd like is you sign Rask back for a year, 2 years, what have you, on a much cheaper contract, which works out well for the Bruins, right? If, let's say Rask was healthy, he'd be still looking at what, 5.5, 6 million, probably is what I would imagine his price tag is. It's significantly dropped now, coming off this injury, but ideally you would have Rask and or Swayman and Vladar in there, and hopefully they hold their own. But there's a whole bunch of risk involving that, right? You don't want to wait 3 months of the season. Hopefully those guys hold their own, and then Rask comes back, triumphantly in February and leads you to a cup, right? That's really how it works, right? I mean, especially where you've got two guys, and who knows? Maybe Swayman hits the ground running, is fantastic, replicates what he did in the regular season, but it's a whole bunch of risk involved. We've talked about this with Swayman before, where we've gone down the rabbit hole with guys like Katahat or these other guys who look great. Teams get the book out on them, and all of a sudden they start looking really vulnerable, or they hit a wall and they have to adjust. So you can't be the Bruins going to next year, and if both Swayman and Vladar hit a wall or fall into a rut, there's no stabilizing presence back there. The Bruins could load up on their defense this offseason, get a legit top 4D, another big-bodied guy like an Alexiak to round out the roster or something, look great. If you've got a goalie letting in soft goals, it undoes all of that, right? So they definitely need to sign a veteran, either backup or a guy that's going to, serve as an insurance policy for, I think, Swayman, if he's the guy that they're going to task with a lot of these minutes in the early going. But then you run into the issue, right? What happens if we get to February and we'll just say, give me a random goalie that like they would sign. Let's say like
Let Jonathan Bernier.
yeah, let's say Bernier. Let's say they sign Jonathan Bernier and he looks fantastic, like Halak his first year, and Swayman looks great. And then you've signed Rask because you expected him to be back. Like, what's gonna really happen then, right? Like it's maybe it's a situation where you're like, all right, well, Swayman, we can still put on waivers. So if he goes down to Providence as the full-time goalie down the stretch there and gets more reps or what have you. So that's a possible solution. But it's definitely a lot of moving parts. I think the Bruins have benefited the last couple of years where with Rask and especially Halak as the backup, it's one where you're like, all right, we don't have to worry about this. Like we'll have the Rask discourse every postseason as always, but during the regular season going to camp, we know we have these two guys in net. We don't have to worry about it. Now it's all right. Like, is Rask coming back? Is he going to be healthy? All right. Like, are we going to trust Jeremy Swayman like this early on, this in the early going as a rookie goalie? And who are we going to get? That's a free agent who's willing to do a backup role. Like, there's a whole bunch of different factors that go into it. There's not really one clear cut solution unless it's let's move on from Rask and we sign a guy that we want to be our new starter or established backup as we give the keys slowly to Swayman.
Yeah, and this is the thing, and I think the anti-Rask crew, is might be happy to see Rask go if he goes. But let me tell you something: within about 20 minutes into next season, you will soon find that you will hate it because whoever's in net, let's say they let Rask go, that would pretty much guarantee they're going to sign a free agent. Let's say they sound like Devin Dubnyk. You got Dubnyk and Swayman in there. Have fun when Swayman, is young and has some issues, and have fun when Dubnyk steps in and it's very underwhelming. And this is all during the regular season, which you have not had to worry about goaltending in the regular season in like 12, 13, 14 years. So this is going to be a new issue. Like, have fun with this. But I would also say that if they do bring back Rask, let's say they get him at $5 million, let's say they get him at that. Then they sign, let's say, Peter Mrazek or Bernier for what would they get? Like 3.5, 3?
Yeah.
Like
two
around there, two.
It's tough to project with the cap now, but
it is
around that.
Yeah, so let's say it's in that ballpark. So that plus Rask is about 7 to 8 million combined in that. Plus you have Swayman, unless you have him on waivers, but that's 925. So that's another technically $1 million. So now you're spending the same on goaltending around 3 goaltenders. So now it hits like, is there even a if you want to do this, do you even want to bring Rask back? And this is why I almost see with the Bruins' loyalty to Rask. And with their playing the kids idea on defense this year and their idea of internal competition, Sweeney's always mentioned year after year after year, internal competition. I would not be surprised to see them bring back just Swayman and Vladar and then sign Rask. I would not be surprised because that is right there with them. Don't change a thing. Leave it be. I could absolutely see them doing that where they just stick with the 2 young guys. They say, we're going to ride this out, training on the job. And, I think that's going to piss off a lot of people because that is not a reliable solution for a team that's technically still trying to contend. And again, nothing against Swayman, nothing against Vladar, but you put 2 young guys in there, you're Washington. And that's less proven. You're less proven than them in that situation. So that's why I really do question and wonder what the move is. And there's no obvious solution. There's no obvious solution. As much as you want to move on from Rask to you out there who do. So you're just going to get, a journeyman backup to back up Swayman or a potential, former number 1. I keep mentioning Dubnyk because that seems like a potential guy that they might target. So I don't know. And that's why I think this is something that's going to dominate the offseason of, what do you do in this situation? Do you think Rask gets re-signed early? Do you think this is something that happens like July 1 or no?
I mean, I think it's going to depend on how they chart out what the rest of the free agent market is, right? Because I feel like it's either going to be like it won't be like a Grubauer. Obviously, he's going to get a nice contract, but like I don't think it's going to even be like 1B of that next crop of players. It's going to be like the 1C of like, oh yeah, that guy, like a Dubnyk or something like that. So they can kind of wait on that, not cost as much. But it's a tough balancing act, right? Because I could see them going with Swayman and Vladar, but man, it's like that's such a big risk going into, especially because we've already mapped out what we think they need to do this offseason in terms of, all right, you've still got this core in place. You've got to go for it because there's no other better solution. I would imagine they're going to target, depth, bottom six, defense, all these other areas that really kind of doomed them this previous postseason. Imagine if they do this, they load up on defense, but they just don't address the goalie situation. Like, and and as you said, they're the Capitals. That's exactly what they would be, is the Capitals. And who knows, maybe if you sign Rask, he comes back in February, but also he's coming off a labral tear. I think Tim Thomas underwent a similar surgery before 2011. I want to say it was the same surgery.
Yeah, Connor, this one's going to get Tuukka the cup. Get this surgery, going to be good.
So it's like those when Kobe went to like Germany. Remember, he was doing these like crazy tests, and like, what does he do? And he came back like his Achilles like was still shot, but whatever. Hopefully, it's not the same thing with Tuukka. But you look at that too, and if you are expecting, let's say, the Bruins are treading water and they didn't sign a backup, and it's Swayman and Vladar, and they're Bruins are winning games 4-3 and what have you, and you have Rask signed, and you hope in February, like, all right, well, just hold out. Like, we're still in a playoff spot. Like, Rask is going to come back and stabilize it. What if Rask isn't good? Like, there's no risk. I mean, there's plenty of risk involved with that, right? It's not like this is he's getting his knee cleaned out or anything like that. This is a full labral tear. Like, takes a while to get back from it. So, there's no clear-cut easy solution here where it's like, it's a clean slate and you're plugging in guys, or it's guys you really know a lot about. Even Rask, who's been steady as has been during the regular season the last decade, as you said, he's no guarantee either. So I'd imagine they sign him. And the Bruins, at the very least, another reason why I think they would sign him is they have all the leverage in the world. Like, I think Rask agent probably watched that Zoom call and was like, shit, man, like you already said, like, you're either going to retire or sign there. So like the Bruins could, they're going to sign him for like 3.5, like 4, like, is it going to be a significant drop off? So there's a whole bunch of factors that go into it. Cause if Rask signs for like 3.5, then maybe you have more cap to divert to another backup goalie. So I feel like when we talk about this, we're going to talk about this the entire offseason. I feel like Charlie and Always Sunny, when he's got the board with all like the strings attached, that's how the goalie situation is. There's no like easy way to like have a correlation between like who's going to get the reps and what the best course of action is, because there's so many things that can go haywire when it comes to the goalie situation.
Yes, and it was kind of like Feidelberg's tweet on Friday. Like, today's a tough day for hockey agents when Krejci comes out, and we'll get to Krejci in a second. And Hall's, like, oh, I just want to play here, and Rask's like, I don't want to go anywhere else. I want to play here, and their agents are just like, what the hell? I'm trying to negotiate something here, and you're just absolutely blowing the negotiations. But I mean, to me, I mean, if you can get Rask at 3.5, like, might as well. But again, a month after Rask returns next year, he'll turn 35 on a bad hip that had to be repaired. Like, I just, to me, you're right. There's still a lot of risk involved in that. I mean, I'm looking at the free agent list right now. Goalies who are a little cheaper, Mike Smith, Brian Elliott, these guys you want. I mean, if they can come in for, if you tell them, hey, you'll get a considerable amount of games for 3 to 4 months. Sure. Carter Hutton, and
is Scott Wedgwood a free agent? Because they might just sign him to like stop him from like shutting out the Bruins.
Scott Wedgwood is a free agent. We should start that. Bruins getting Scott Wedgwood. I would die if the Bruins would have got Scott Wedgwood. I mean, 700. You made 700,000 last year. Maybe. Oh, Andrew Hammond, the Hamburglar. He's a UFA. So they get the Hamburger in here.
This is promising.
This is promising. Let's see who else. Then Louis Domingue. That's Maxim Legacy. Get the reunion going. He was here for a bit. Bring him back. So there's just the guy in Florida, Chris Drager, the young guy. Maybe you target him. I don't know. Maybe it's not a bad idea. Is he even young? He's 27. He's not that young. But so there's guys you can pick from here. It's not like there is a lot to, if you want that situation where you have let's say a Mike Smith, who's 39, by the way. It's not exactly he's young. But, Mike Smith for half a season with Swayman, and then Rask when he comes back. Maybe you do that. I don't know. If you can keep that under 6-7 million combined, I'm not against it. But it's also just like, you don't know what Rask is going to be like when he comes back. But if you can get Mike Smith just had a good season. So, he's going to be due for probably a little bit of a pay raise from what was he making this year? He was making... I think 1.5 million. Yeah, 1.5
Yeah.
million. So I would think he'd get a little bump because he did have a solid enough year. So that's going to be a whole thing that, yes, we do the whole thing with the board and we try to piece everything together and it doesn't always work. David Krejci, on the other hand, that it's funny that the only Bruin on Friday that was very confident in their contract status was Mike Riley, ironically enough, which we'll get to maybe later or in a different episode, where he was just like, "Oh yeah, we're getting something done. We're on the same page here." Like, and I haven't heard a player come out like that
Mhm.
in so long. That was just like, "Oh yeah," like because I'm so used to the Torrey Krug stuff, where Krug would come out every
Right.
like couple weeks and be like, "Oh yeah, things haven't talked to him. They rescinded their contract offer. Like this is awful,
Mhm.
man. This all I want to do is be here, and this is terrible." But Krejci comes out, and typical Krejci fashion doesn't really say much, kind of nonchalant. But my favorite quote of that whole thing was when he's like, "I talked to my parents. I don't even know what to tell them." Like,
Yeah. I was
that is
like,
hilarious. But obviously, Krejci's a UFA, getting older, mid-30s. Didn't feel like they were going to bring him back going into this year. But after seeing Coyle not really step into that role, producing consistently, and Krejci getting Taylor Hall next to him, makes you think, well, they'd probably bring him back. But from the sounds of it, that exit interview didn't sound like Krejci was getting a return call. Am I right to think this?
yeah, no, it was very, very interesting. And as you say, Krejci doesn't give much anyway, but even just like the tone of it or what have you, again, he's not a guy that outwardly expresses his emotions, I think, nearly as much as some other guys. But yeah, you wonder what kind of the dialogue is there and what the Bruins are thinking in that situation. Because as you said, I think had going into the year, they expected probably to move on from him, whether it's, they expected Charlie Coyle to be the 2C or they were expecting big things from Sidnika. Neither one of those things happened, right? So from the Bruins perspective, it feels weird that would even be like a route they take unless they want to blow things up, because I don't know what the other best solution is. Like, how many things are working in your favor in terms of re-signing Krejci other than delaying the inevitable of rebuilding, right? Because still is a top six center at this point in his career. He's not really a guy that, his skills are going to diminish with age. He doesn't rely on speed. He's still like a playmaking guy, which if you have Hall back next year with him, you're probably still going to have a pretty good top six. Like, as much as I think it's kind of like how I think game 6 has like put a bad taste in everyone's mouth that like people want to like put Grizzlick on like the expansion unprotected list. It's like, no, like chill out, guys. Like relax. Like, game 6 sucked, but you have to let's be realistic here. Your top 6 was rolling regular season. You're gonna have a really good top 6 if all 3 of those guys are back. But I think if you look at it too, you have no other better solution. There's not like a Bakov or someone like that on free agency. I saw some people were like, "Oh, they can get Nugent Hopkins." Like, get out! Like, do you want Ryan Nugent Hopkins? Like, get your shit together. Like, no, it's not. Unless you like, is he going to be your new franchise cornerstone or a guy that you're going to build the next wave? Like, so there's no other really option out there. I don't see them. They already have enough fires to put out in free agency and the trade market with, bottom 6 wingers, defensemen especially. So I don't know if you're going to add
Goaltending.
yeah, like, unless you're trading for Eichel, which we're not going to talk about this yet because I still don't know how that would ever happen. There's no like, whale you're chasing that's going to like fix the issue that Krejci wouldn't replicate in terms of his production. And look at it too. It's not like he's a guy that you're not in the Krug conundrum where like the guy warrants a pay raise and a long-term contract. Like, Krejci, again, much to probably his agent's chagrin, has said it's not about the money. And it's not like he's going to be like asking for a 5-year contract at his age. So like, if you get Krejci back for 2 years at 5, 4.5, I don't know. Like, I mean, it's all going to depend. Every time I think we estimate these annual cap hits are always below what we think, and we're always surprised about it. But like, even if it's 5 for 2 years as a stopgap, as you continue to try to find that succession plan, whether it's through the draft or free agents next year, like that's what you need, this like stopgap. You need this thing that's going to hold you in place and at least keep you competitive. Because if you let Krejci walk for some reason and you replace him with a guy like Nugent Hopkins, who's more expensive and not as good, like what are we doing here?
Yeah, and the other thing is, by the way, next offseason you have Patrice Bergeron up
Yes.
at center. So that's the thing, and that's why I think it is good to get the stability down, especially if he's going to take less. If he's going to take less, fine. Like, what's wrong with that? And I don't know what the team wants. I mean, do you want to keep playing the kids up front too? Do you want to just set Studnicka in there? Do you want to set Coyle in as a second line guy? And again, next offseason's Barkov, Philip Forsberg, Malkin, and Claude Giroux. Obviously, those guys won't really get long-term deals. Nazem Kadri's up next season. Maybe you can snag him. Yeah,
Good deal, guys. Yeah, good. That didn't blow up in everyone's face yet again.
Hey, you know what? Ricard Raquel is a free agent next offseason, and he's been rumored to come to the Bruins for the past 3 years. Maybe now you just go out and get him. You end the trade rumors, you just go out and get Ricard Raquel. But no, for this offseason, there's not a ton of Nugent Hopkins is really the only good young-ish center in need of a long-term deal that I can see. And I don't think that's a fit. I don't think that's a smart investment at all. So for me, I don't again, I don't see the reason to move on from Krejci, but it feels like they are. It felt like it back at the beginning of the season, and it'll be interesting to see what Sweeney will have already said today, because it's speaking Tuesday, and we're recording this on a Monday for the first time in 3 weeks now, which is pretty impressive for us. But yeah, the stuff with Krejci is going to be interesting, because I feel like that's going to take a while to happen. I don't think Krejci signs on day one. I think that's something that goes on for a long time. But I mean, if you remember a few years ago when they were going after Tavares, that would have required them moving Krejci. They've been willing to part with Krejci in the past. So I am interested to see what they end up doing with this, because it's not. He's going to be there at the start of the season, and I think you want to have that top six solidified. Now, there is the argument that you need to move on and you need to make some change up front. Krejci's a pretty big shakeup. If this top six isn't getting you over the hump, you need to try something new at center. But what's the option? What is the other options? And this isn't next offseason where you do have some other guys who you could maybe want to sign. As you said, there's no one this offseason that is jumping off the page. And I don't think moves the needle in terms of that stuff. As you said, Nugent Hopkins doesn't do it. And I mean, do you want to do it through the trade market? I think the trades should be thought about in the sense of a top 4 defenseman. Yeah. Which, by the way, now that you're re-signing Mike Riley, because it's pretty much official, given off what Riley said, he's due for a pay bump. Is he now going to be a top 4? I mean, if you sign him to, let's say, $3 million, that's kind of top 4 money. That's not you're going to be our 5th defenseman, and you already have enough 5th and 6th defensemen. Yeah. So, do you like the top 4 going into next season of Riley, Grzelcyk, McAvoy, and Carlo? I think we'd like to see it better. I think everyone would like to see that better. Maybe this is the offseason they trade for Ekholm finally. Who knows?
Would have helped.
Would have helped. Honestly, would have helped a lot. But so, I mean, that's kind of the 2 biggest things. I mean, obviously you have the Taylor Hall stuff as well, and I guess we can discuss that quickly. Hall said that he wants to stay here, he wants to stay in Boston. Obviously, he said before it's not about the money, and then he got a deal that was based off money. But I genuinely do think he wants to stay here. I don't think that that's I think being in a good destination helps, and being in a good spot helps. But again, as we've said before, who's he going to play center? If Krejci's not coming back, who's he playing with? Does he want to go back?
Does he want to go back to Edmonton with Ryan Nugent Hopkins? Does he want to have Ryan Nugent Hopkins there? He's probably all right, no, screw this. I think if you want Hall back, you need Krejci back. Yeah. Or unless you're getting Eichel or someone, you need a legit top 6 center with him. If you're going to max him, why are you signing Hall to a long-term deal for who knows what the average annual cap hit's going to be, to have him be with a center that you get to go to long as you want to see how good they are, right? You want to have that top 6 set in stone. How many years have we been dealing with going to camp, wondering who's going to be on Krejci's line? Now you got a legitimate, top 6 winger. Krejci seems re-energized. It makes way too much sense to sign Krejci to again a short-term, lower cap hit. No need to overthink this. And with Hall, it's the same thing. Of as much as I think people are going to hop on the last 2 games against the Islanders, look at the overwhelming body of work of what he showed so far. If you give him a full season, probably going to get a 30-goal season out of this guy, probably for a couple of years. especially if
Yeah.
Krejci's there with Craig
Yeah.
Smith or whoever else they find that, let's say they add another like middle six guy on the wing and they slot in between, let's just say like Blake Coleman or whatever. Like even Blake Coleman could be a guy that fits in that line, and Craig Smith gets bumped down. So plenty of different moves they can make, but I think when it comes to Hall, who, it's not like he's like this, from what he said, at least, it's not like he's a mercenary trying to like, cash out once again. Like this seems like a good fit for both parties. It's a guy that kind of fell into your lap based on the circumstances, with him pretty much wanting to go to Boston after signing with Buffalo. Again, like Krejci, more expensive, obviously, but it makes far too much sense for them not to lock him up on a longer contract.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Taylor Hall is I'm curious if they do go for that long contract. I mean, I think it feels like, Hall had said he wants to have a home for the next few years. So it almost feels like that might be a 3 or 4 year deal, which I think would be a better option because, again, obviously it's hard to project. And, 6 years ago, we never would have known the Bruins would be here. But, in 6 years, are you confident the Bruins are still contenders? I don't know. I don't know. Again, with the lack of center depth down the middle, I'm not really sure of anything. So I am curious as to how they approach the negotiations with Hall if they go 3 or 4 years. And also, if you're the Bruins, do you want to pay Hall $6 million a year to play with Charlie Coyle? Like, I don't know if that's worth it. Like if and again, like I am afraid, obviously Marchand comes out and says, well, I'm confident in management that they'll make us still a contender. And it's like, that's true. But again, if you're not bringing Krejci back and you're going young in net and your top four is Riley, Grzelcyk, Carlo, McAvoy, I don't know. I don't know if that's contendery because now I think they haven't made this official yet, but they're probably going back to the old division alignments. So now you're going back to playing against Tampa and Toronto, who, by the way, is good, is a joke, but they're good, and Florida, who's also really good. So you have to compete with a tough division. Also, you have Montreal, who just is in the Final Four. So it's not getting easier, and you seem to be getting worse if you go the route that you normally would go, which is, just playing your prospects and your young guys and seeing what you have in them. But who knows? They could make a bunch of big splashes this offseason. They could freaking make some big moves. They could, or do the easy thing, what you've been saying, just re-sign these guys, add where you need to add, and you'll be fine. So in that sense, it'd be good. But again, if you're going to just have Swayman and Vladar open the season in net, and you're not going to re-sign Krejci, and you're going to have Stanika or Coyle play the second line center, good luck just making the playoffs. But again, that's the first episode of the off season. So who really knows? Before we go, Connor, is there anything that you'd like to plug?
Yeah, we're going to be obviously plenty of takeaways, to go through with Don Sweeney and Kim Neely's end of season press conferences, which will be coming up the next day. Hopefully that will give us some sort of precursor as to what to expect from this offseason, whether it be the plan in net or Krejci or what have you, other targets you're looking at this offseason. So we'll map all that out over at BSJ. So subscribe over at bostonsportsjournal.com. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. If the Bruins want a solution in net, by the way, I played street hockey over the weekend with some friends, and I was in net. I was almost lights out. I mean,
there you go.
We won 9-6, so 6 goals wasn't great. But I had a tough first period. 3 goals went in on me, but I didn't warm up. I just put pads on. It was hot out. It was a lot of factors. But second period, I was money. Second period,
there you go. Working towards that PTO contract.
I'm getting one. But at any rate, that is Bruins Beat for this week. Conor Ryan, F. Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.